My wife, Vivian, was a dancer, her body a symphony of grace. After we married, the thought of pregnancy interrupting her burgeoning career was a constant shadow. She didn't want children, not yet, perhaps never. To ease her mind, to show my unwavering support for her dreams, I made a profound decision. I had a vasectomy. 10 years slipped by, a comfortable rhythm to our lives. Then, a windfall, a multi-million-dollar payout from a property demolition. And, just as suddenly, 3 children materialized, staking a claim on my fortune. A chilling, private investigation unraveled a truth I could barely comprehend. They were Vivian's. Triplets, sired not by me, but by Ethan, her childhood sweetheart. The names she'd chosen for them, Leo, Elias, and Aaron, were a cruel, twisted homage. Ethan's full name, I discovered with a sickening lurch, was Ethan Elias Aaron. The betrayal cut deeper. Vivian's mother, a woman I'd treated with respect and generosity, had used the substantial allowance I provided to buy a sprawling, modern apartment for them in her old hometown. Vivian, under the guise of performance tours and advanced workshops, had been shuttling between our city and theirs, living a double life. It was a bolt from the blue, shattering the carefully constructed world I thought we shared. "Why, Vivian? Why?" I roared, the words tearing from my throat, the polished surfaces of our living room seeming to mock my anguish. Her reply, delivered with an almost chilling calm, was, "For a childhood promise, Marcus." My fist slammed onto the cold marble coffee table, the sound a gunshot in the suffocating silence. We fought then, a tempest of accusations and broken trust, the meticulously arranged decor of our home bearing silent witness to its fracturing. Relatives and friends, drawn by the commotion or perhaps summoned by Vivian, soon filled the room, their well-meaning but clueless platitudes grating on my raw nerves. "Marcus, you two were the campus sweethearts who made it to the altar. Everyone envied your story," one aunt chirped. "So, a few children, you can't have your own, right? Isn't this a blessing in disguise?" Another chimed in. "And Vivian's never made you feel less of a man all these years because of it. Now you have money, children to dote on, isn't that wonderful?" My heart ached, a physical pain constricting my chest. I looked at Vivian. Even in her late 30s, she possessed the ethereal beauty of a girl of 18, her dancer's poise unmarred by the chaos. "Give them money," I choked out, the words tasting like ash. "A settlement. Then they leave. That's the most I can offer." Vivian rose, her slim figure radiating a defiant strength. Her gaze, usually soft, was unwavering. "They are my children, Marcus. They have a right to our assets. If you can't accept that, then we'll settle this in court." The last thread of hope, of the life I thought I had, snapped. I coldly wiped a smear of blood from my knuckles, the sting a distant echo of the wound in my soul. "Vivian," I said, my voice devoid of its earlier fire, hollowed out by betrayal, "let's get a divorce." Before Vivian could respond, her mother lunged to her feet, her face contorted with rage. A teacup flew from her hand, narrowly missing my head and shattering against the wall. "You worthless excuse for a man," she shrieked, her voice venomous. "You dare mention divorce? If anyone's leaving, it's Vivian. You have no right, none at all." Relatives rushed to restrain her, their murmurs a confused babble. Vivian, perhaps sensing the dangerous calm that had settled over me, softened her tone, though her words still twisted the knife. "Marcus, I know I've hurt you. Terribly. But I had my reasons, my obligations." She cast a glance towards the fuming Ethan, who had materialized at some point and was now hovering protectively near the children. "Ethan and I were promised to each other as children. It was an old family arrangement. Marrying you. I broke that vow. He's been alone all these years, dedicated to me in his own way, waiting. Giving him children. It was a form of compensation, Marcus, a way to right an old wrong." Her voice was a gentle murmur, painting a picture of her own supposed sacrifice, her own difficult choices. "After 12 years together, 12 years of what I thought was love and understanding, I truly believed you would understand. Marcus, that you'd be compassionate. How could you shame me like this, in front of everyone?" She spoke of her predicament, her helplessness, subtly shifting the blame to my insensitivity, my failure to see the bigger picture. The audacity of it stunned me into a momentary silence. The room spun with the weight of her deceit. I closed my eyes, the present fading into a vivid, painful memory. 10 years ago, Vivian, a fledgling dancer, her spirit luminous, performing a self-choreographed peacock dance at a university showcase. She was an ethereal being, and she had captivated my soul. But her mother, even then, had her hooks in. She had already accepted a bride price from Ethan's family, a family from a poorer, rural background. To break that arrangement meant returning double the amount. She'd even boasted that Ethan would buy her a house, that he would marry into their family, a matrilocal marriage that would have been deeply shaming for my own family. I'd gone to my own parents, desperate, pleading. My father, a proud, unyielding man who had built his furniture factory from scratch, had exploded with a fury I'd never witnessed. A son of mine, marrying into a penniless rural family, taking their name, living under their roof. He'd actually kicked me, sending me sprawling to the ground. Walk out that door for her, Marcus, and I'll burn this furniture factory to the ground. I'll swear I never had a son. Eventually, through endless pleading, negotiation, and a promise to uphold our family name, I wore him down. He relented, providing the money for the exorbitant bride price, and even a down payment for a small apartment for Vivian's mother in the city, a gesture of goodwill. I worked relentlessly, taking on every side project, every extra hour I could find, until I could secretly pay off that apartment in full and bring her mother to live closer to us, thinking it would please Vivian. Then came Vivian's career. The dancing. No children, Marcus, not now, she'd said, her eyes wide and pleading. It will ruin everything I've worked for. So, I went to a clinic. The vasectomy was my secret gift. To her ambition, my sacrifice laid at the altar of her dreams. I even persuaded a doctor I knew to draft a vague diagnosis of low fertility for me, a shield against the inevitable societal and familial pressure. The pressure started almost immediately after the wedding. Both sets of parents, anxious for grandchildren. I presented the infertility document. My mother-in-law's gaze turned cold from that day, her words laced with thinly veiled insinuations that I wasn't a real man, that her beautiful, talented daughter had drawn the shortest straw, marrying a dud. Vivian, witnessing my parents' quiet disappointment and her mother's increasingly open scorn, once suggested revealing the truth. Marcus, maybe I should just tell them it was my choice, my career. I held her close then, stroking her hair. Vivian, darling, your mother might eventually accept it, but what about my parents? Could you bear their disappointment, the constant pressure to give up your dance, the whispers? She had said nothing, her silence a clear, resounding answer. Dance for a few more years. I told her earnestly that day. And if, one day, you feel differently, if you want to be a mother, just say the word. I'll have the vasectomy reversed. We'll have our baby. Whatever you want, Vivian, I'll always support you. The second year of our marriage, an opportunity arose for Vivian, a prestigious, though self-funded, advanced dance program in another city. Without a moment's hesitation, I diverted a significant sum from the furniture factory, my inheritance, to pay for it. From that day, curiously, my mother-in-law's demeanor towards me changed. The taunts ceased. She began spending long stretches in her hometown, claiming the city air stifled her, and she missed her old friends. I, in my naivety, believed she'd finally accepted me, or at least was giving us space to be a couple. The truth, I now saw with horrifying clarity, was far more sinister. She was in that neighboring city, the city of Vivian's training, doting on her 3 precious grandsons. Vivian hadn't gone for advanced training. She'd used my money, my unwavering support, to secretly bear Ethan's children. The pain was a vice around my chest, squeezing the air from my lungs. Vivian, I whispered, the sound ragged, is this how you compensate someone? By having their children with another man? Did you ever, for one moment, think about me? About my feelings? A flicker of something, guilt, perhaps, crossed her face, but it was quickly extinguished, replaced by that unsettling composure. I'm sorry, Marcus. Truly. I just didn't want you to go through another surgery. It seemed so invasive. And honestly, her voice dropped, becoming more intimate. I didn't want children to disrupt our lives, our peace. Our lives, I echoed, incredulous. Ethan understood. She pressed on, ignoring my interjection. He said after the children were born, his duty to his lineage would be fulfilled. He'd be content. He promised to raise them quietly, never marry again, never interfere with us. He even said, if you were agreeable, he'd be fine with the children respecting you, calling you their godfather. A harsh, Mirthless laugh escaped me. So, Ethan is that magnanimous, is he? Worried I'd be lonely in my old age, so he thoughtfully fathered 3 sons for me to have someone pay their respects? Perhaps I should kowtow in gratitude, lest I truly become a desolate old man. Vivian offered a placid, almost beatific smile. Gratitude isn't necessary, Marcus. Ethan, though a few years younger than you, is remarkably mature and considerate. He understood his delicate position. He never uttered a word of complaint, just focused on raising the children, ensuring I had no worries, so I could focus on my dance and on us. Now the children are older, she continued, laying out her grotesque plan as if discussing a business arrangement, and our financial situation has improved significantly with this demolition money. I feel it's time to give Ethan a proper acknowledgement. $1 million from the settlement, as compensation for his decade of quiet dedication, and we'll buy him a 4-bedroom house here in the city. The children are accustomed to him. It's best they continue to live with him. I'll visit them, of course, occasionally, to fulfill my responsibilities as their mother. Her words were like hammer blows, each one driving a nail deeper into the coffin of our marriage. My mouth opened, but only a dry, rasping sound emerged. Vivian, are you suggesting a second family? You want a home away from home, funded by me? The words were a desperate plea for her to see the madness of it. How can you be so cruel? After everything I've done, everything I've sacrificed for you, how am I supposed to face our friends, our families, anyone? A flicker of annoyance crossed her face. Marcus, I know this is difficult for you, but for years, you've said you didn't care about idle gossip, that only our happiness together mattered. What are you implying now? That I should be heartless? That I should abandon my own children? Her expression hardened then, her eyes glinting. Marcus, I am a mother. You don't have children. You cannot possibly comprehend the bond, the primal, unbreakable responsibility. I cannot simply ignore their existence, pretend they aren't mine. She stood, her posture regal, and gave me a long, unreadable look. I know this is a shock. It's a lot to take in. Think about it, Marcus. Please. I still hope you can accept them. After all, she added, her voice softening again into a manipulative caress, my blood flows in their veins. I can't just cast them aside. With that, she turned and, with a gesture, ushered the bewildered relatives out of the room, leaving me slumped on the sofa, utterly alone in the echoing ruins of my life. I poured a generous measure of whiskey, the amber liquid doing little to numb the chill that had settled deep in my bones. My phone buzzed, the private investigator I'd hired when the first inklings of this nightmare had surfaced. Since the truth had exploded into our lives, Vivian and her mother had become less secretive, almost brazen. The photos he sent were clear, damning. The 5 of them, Vivian, Ethan, and the 3 boys, a perfect, smiling family unit, dining at a fancy restaurant. Vivian's face alight with a joy I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Vivian and Ethan laughing as they played with the children in a sun-dappled park. The 2 of them, a united, handsome front, taking the boys to a weekend enrichment class. Mundane scenes of domestic bliss, yet each image was a fresh stab to my already bleeding heart. If my father were alive, he'd surely slap me across the face and call me the biggest fool he'd ever known. But he was gone, taken by liver cancer a year ago. His last words to me, his hand, frail in mine, were to live well, to not carry unnecessary burdens, to consider adoption if loneliness ever became too much. I thought I had cried all my tears in the past few days, but watching Vivian's radiant smile in those pictures, a fresh wave of grief and rage washed over me. I couldn't comprehend it. How could Vivian do this to me, after everything? And her mother? Even when the factory struggled through lean years, I never failed to provide her $20,000 a month for living expenses. She'd claimed chronic anemia, a weak heart, requiring daily physiotherapy and a host of expensive supplements. All lies, apparently, meticulously constructed to fund her daughter's secret life, her secret family. As dawn painted the sky in pale, indifferent hues, I made a call to the demolition project manager. I've made a decision about the compensation funds, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'll be investing the entire sum into a professionally managed trust. I'll come by later today to sign the necessary papers. When Vivian returned later that morning, I was awash in alcohol and sorrow, the empty whiskey bottle on the table a testament to my despair. Tears streamed down my face, unchecked. She looked momentarily contrite, gently helping me lie down on the sofa. dabbing my face with a warm, damp towel. The cloying scent of her expensive cologne, a fragrance I didn't recognize as her usual, filled my nostrils, churning my stomach. She'd clearly spent the night with them, in the apartment I had bought for her mother. She cradled my head, kissing my hair, murmuring apologies over and over, her breath smelling faintly of wine. For a fleeting, disorienting moment, I was transported back a decade, to when my father had vehemently opposed our marriage. We'd lived in a cramped, damp basement apartment then, surviving on stale bread and instant noodles. But Vivian, then, had loved me. Or, so I believed. She hadn't complained once, trudging alongside me as I chased orders for the fledgling factory, even insisting on the cheapest, most basic fixtures for our tiny bathroom. To save money, she would hold me when I came home late and drunk from fruitless client meetings, crying, saying she'd burdened me, urging me to go back to my family and forget her. I clung to her now, a drowning man grasping at a phantom lifeline, the memory of that earlier, simpler love a torment. Vivian, I pleaded, my voice hoarse, tell them to go. Please. We can support them financially, send money every month. But don't see them again. Please, can we try to fix this? Her body, pliant and seemingly remorseful a moment before, stiffened in my arms. Her gentle ministrations ceased. And just like that, the fragile illusion shattered. I was instantly, chillingly sober. I pushed myself up, a bitter, incredulous laugh escaping me. Why, Vivian? I asked, the question raw with a decade of suppressed pain and a fresh, unbearable betrayal. When you decided you wanted children, after all your talk of career, why didn't you come to me? Why, Ethan? My fist shot out, connecting with the glass door of a nearby display cabinet. Shards rained down like glittering tears, and a warm, sticky trickle of blood snaked down my hand. For several days, I lived at the factory, immersing myself in the complex logistics of the post-demolition restructuring and seeking refuge from the wreckage of my personal life. Then, Vivian called. Marcus, can you come home tonight? There's something important I need to discuss with you. Her voice was carefully neutral. Knowing this confrontation was inevitable, I agreed. I pushed open the front door of our house, my ancestral home, and froze. For a disorienting moment, I thought I'd entered the wrong address. The wall sconces and the grand crystal chandelier in the hall blazed with light. Animated cartoons blared from the widescreen television in the living room, and 3 young boys were sprawled on the expensive leather sofa, munching on snacks, their chatter echoing through the house. The dining table, usually bare unless we had guests, was laden with an elaborate spread of dishes. An open bottle of red wine was breathing nearby, and a large, 3-tiered birthday cake sat as an ostentatious centerpiece. A lavish bouquet of red roses, easily 24 blooms, dominated the table. Vivian, beaming as if nothing was amiss, walked towards me, a picture of domestic bliss. She reached out to take my briefcase. Marcus, you're back. Wonderful. Everything's ready. We were just waiting for you to start dinner. Seeing my bewildered, thunderous expression, she gently but firmly steered me towards the dining room. It's the Triplets' birthday today, she announced brightly. I thought it would be a good chance for you to get to know them properly, to build a connection. So, I decided to host a little celebration here at home. Then, turning to the boys, who were still mostly engrossed in their cartoon, she called out in a sugary voice, Leo, Elias, Aaron, come and meet your Uncle Marcus. Come on now. If you bow to him respectfully and wish him well, you'll have a wonderful new godfather. The boys, after more coaxing and promises of cake, reluctantly peeled themselves away from the screen. They bore little resemblance to the graceful Vivian. They had small, sharp eyes, stocky builds, and an air of impatient, almost surly entitlement, a far cry from the gentle, artistic spirit I believed Vivian possessed in her youth. I understood then. This wasn't a simple introduction. It was a meticulously planned ambush. So you're Marcus, the tallest of the 3, presumably Leo, said, looking me up and down with undisguised disdain. You're really ugly. Not handsome like my dad at all. The other 2 chimed in, wrinkling their noses. Mommy, is he the godfather you found for us? I don't want him. He's old and ugly. Yeah, if Big Brother doesn't want him, I don't either, the smallest one piped up. It'd be embarrassing to be seen with him. His clothes are so drab and boring. Vivian quickly tried to shush the youngest, a strained smile plastered on her face. Elias, darling, don't be rude. Remember what Mommy told you? If you call him Godfather, he'll buy you big cars, a big house, and lots of toys. Then, turning back to me, her eyes gleaming with a proprietary light, she said, Marcus, since the boys will acknowledge you as their godfather, you'll need to show some generosity, of course. I was thinking, from the demolition money. $3 million for each child seems fair. And another $1 million to buy Ethan that 4-bedroom apartment we discussed. After all, she added, with a dismissive wave of her hand, money is just material, Marcus. You don't have children of your own. Eventually, it would all go to them anyway. If you build a good relationship with them now, they'll look after you in your old age. I'm only thinking of your well-being. Leo, the eldest, eyed me with a shrewdness that belied his age. My dad said you're pretty pathetic not having any kids of your own. So, I guess we can call you Godfather. But you better not be stingy. You have to treat us really well. If you don't, when you're old and useless, I'll make you go pick up garbage and lock you in a dark room with only leftovers to eat. A cold, venomous laugh escaped me. I pushed her hand away, the one she'd placed placatingly on my arm. Who told any of you I was agreeing to be their godfather? Big cars and houses? What about their real father? Doesn't he have any skills? Why doesn't he buy them these things? What's the point of a godfather with a different surname, a stranger? Leo, his face flushing with anger at the perceived slight to his father, flew into a rage, ramming his head into my stomach. His small fists pummeled me. How dare you say that about my dad? You're old and stingy. No wonder you don't have any sons. The other 2 boys surged forward, a miniature wolf pack, scratching and pulling at my clothes. We don't want you here, ugly man. Get out. Though they were only 10, their combined assault was surprisingly forceful, and a sharp pain shot through my abdomen. I grabbed their arms, trying to pull them off, but they kicked and struggled with surprising ferocity. In the melee, a sudden, sickening impact to my groin sent a wave of nauseating agony through my entire body. Blinded by pain, I instinctively shoved them away forcefully. There was a sickening thud and a sharp yelp. Leo had stumbled backward and cracked his head hard on the sharp marble edge of the coffee table. Instantly, the living room was filled with ear-splitting, theatrical wails. Vivian's mother burst from the kitchen as if on cue, saw Leo on the floor, and shrieked, rushing to him, cooing, "My precious baby, my little heart." Blood was welling from a cut on his forehead. I felt a pang of guilt, mixed with the throbbing pain in my groin, and was about to speak when another figure emerged from the kitchen. It was my first time seeing Ethan in person. He was just as the PI's photos had shown, fair-skinned, tall, with an air of refined, almost languid delicacy. He wore expensive, casual clothes that highlighted his physique. I instinctively looked down at myself, my standard factory tracksuit, my dusty sneakers, my face undoubtedly haggard and aged from days of relentless stress and sleeplessness. An indescribable bitterness welled up inside me. Ethan saw the blood on Leo's forehead and immediately scooped the boy into his arms, his face a mask of anguished concern. "Daddy, it was him. He pushed me. Really hard," Leo sobbed, pointing an accusing finger at me. Ethan looked up, his eyes, a pale, washed-out blue, cold and accusing. "Mr. Shun," he said, his voice dripping with reproach, though with an undertone of something like triumph. "How could you lay a hand on a child? Even if you've never been a father and perhaps lack paternal affection, surely you're not so malicious as to intentionally harm a boy." He then turned to Vivian, his voice laced with a carefully modulated indignation. "Vivian, darling, I know Marcus has never liked us, never approved. That's why I've always respected your wishes and never set foot in this city, never intruded. My only desire has been to raise our children well, never to compete with anyone for your affection. Today, you told us he'd agreed, that he was ready to welcome us, that we could finally be a family. I was overjoyed. But to see him treat Leo like this. Vivian, perhaps it's best if I take the children and go back. I don't want to live under someone else's roof, constantly watching their moods and feeling unwelcome, and I certainly don't want my children to be casually mistreated or feel threatened." Ethan made a show of gathering the other 2 boys, who clung to him, casting fearful glances at me, as if to leave. Vivian was frantic. "Ethan, no, don't go. I won't let you. This is your home now, your children's home. Where would you possibly go?" She grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in like talons, and physically pulled me in front of Ethan. "I promise you, Ethan, no one will ever make you feel unwelcome here again. Today was a terrible misunderstanding. It won't happen again. Then, to me, her voice was a fierce, venomous hiss. Marcus, apologize to Leo. Now, tell him you didn't mean it, that it was an accident. Say it. And you promise Ethan, right now, that you'll treat these children as if they were your own flesh and blood. Promise him you'll never, ever lay a hand on them again. She twisted my arm sharply for emphasis, her nails biting into my skin. Her words were like knives, carving away the last vestiges of my self-control. This house, my ancestral home, passed down by my father, his father before him. How could she so casually, so brazenly, declare it the home of her lover and his illegitimate children? How could she demand, with such entitlement, that I apologize to a 10-year-old boy who had just assaulted me, and make promises to her paramour, the man who had cuckolded me for a decade? Suddenly, I didn't want to say anything more. There was no point in explaining, in arguing, in trying to salvage anything from this grotesque farce. All my attempts at reconciliation, at understanding, had been a fool's errand, the desperate actions of a man clinging to a phantom. I slowly straightened up, my body aching, my spirit in tatters. My face, I knew, was devoid of all expression. I pointed to the door. Get out, I said, my voice flat but resonant, carrying over the boy's diminishing sobs. All of you, get out. This house belongs to the Shin family. It is my name on the deed. What right do any of you have to be here? Vivian's mother, who had been crooning over Leo, shot up, her face purple with rage. She grabbed a nearby dining chair, a heavy oak antique, and swung it wildly. I sidestepped, but not quickly enough. A leg of the chair caught me on the side of the head. Stars exploded behind my eyes, and a searing pain lanced through my skull. You bastard, she screamed. You dare to kick us out? You married my daughter. What's yours is hers. If anyone's getting out, it's you. A warm trickle of blood coursed down my temple. The room began to swim. Vivian watched, her expression a mixture of annoyance and cold detachment, as if I were the one creating this unbearable scene. I pressed a hand to my bleeding head, fighting to stay upright, to remain conscious. My father is watching from heaven, I said, my voice shaking but clear. How can you stand there and allow this? This charlatan and his bastards to defile his home? Do you have no shame? Are you even human? Vivian's face hardened. Marcus, why have you become so petty, so small-minded? It all comes down to money, doesn't it? You just can't bear to part with it. That demolition payout is our joint marital property. Don't I have the right to provide for my children? You really want to force me to sue you in court? She continued, her voice rising. I can't just stand by and watch Ethan struggle to raise 3 children in poverty, can I? She gestured towards Ethan, who was now dabbing at Leo's forehead with a napkin, the picture of paternal concern. Look at Ethan. He bought a cake for the boys. He brought roses for Mom. He even helped in the kitchen for hours today. Why can't you learn from him, Marcus? Be a little more generous, a little more considerate of the bigger picture? Her mother, recovering her composure, sniffed disdainfully. I always said he wasn't as thoughtful or caring as Ethan. Look at him now, making a scene in front of the children. He has no sense of propriety. Mom, please, don't say any more. Vivian began, then turned back to me, her tone slightly softer, but no less demanding. Marcus, just apologize to Leo. Later, we can take them out, buy them something nice to smooth things over. Let's just put this unfortunate incident behind us. Ethan, ever the opportunist, sensed Vivian's slight shift. He cradled Leo tenderly. Vivian, darling, I was just upset for Leo's sake. Perhaps I spoke too harshly. Please don't be angry with Marcus on my account. I'll apologize to him properly later. Right now, Leo is still bleeding. We should get him to a hospital and have a doctor look at this cut. As if on cue, Vivian and her mother immediately fussed over the boy. My sweet boy, does it hurt terribly? Grandma will take you to the hospital right now. Don't be scared, darling, Mommy and Daddy are here. We're going to the hospital right away. The 3 of them, Ethan carrying Leo, Vivian and her mother flanking them solicitously, hurried out of the house, a perfect tableau of a loving, concerned family. They disappeared into the encroaching darkness, leaving me standing alone in my bloodied, violated home. A bitter, self-mocking laugh escaped my lips. An hour later, my phone chimed with a series of voice messages. It was Vivian, her voice tight with irritation. Marcus, I really don't know what to say about your attitude today. Children just need a little coaxing, a little patience. How could you resort to violence? I had the best intentions, trying to bring everyone together. Why can't you show a little understanding? Another message followed. Leo was terrified. He's still shaken. I'm staying at Mom's tonight to be with him. And I'll try to smooth things over. Explain that you didn't mean it. But you can't be so aggressive next time. He's refusing to even come downstairs. A pause. Then, perhaps sensing my silence on the other end, her tone shifted slightly. All right. You were hurt too, I suppose. Don't dwell on it. There's antiseptic in the bathroom cabinet. Use it. Honestly, Marcus, a grown man getting so jealous and petty. It's embarrassing. You could learn a thing or two about grace and maturity from Ethan. I listened to her voice, a cold sneer twisting my lips. Then, calmly, I made 2 phone calls. Mr. Davies, I said to my longtime secretary, I've decided to sell the old family house. Please contact potential buyers immediately, and I need you to find a lawyer to draft a divorce agreement. Urgently. My next call was to Mr. Peterson, a business associate. Mr. Peterson, I've given your proposal more thought. I'm in. I'll head to Seaforth to spearhead the new market development project. After Vivian had settled Leo for the night, an uneasy feeling gnawed at her. The messages she'd sent Marcus hours ago had gone unanswered, sinking into a digital abyss. The image of his desolate, despairing eyes as she'd left haunted her. A sudden, sharp anxiety pierced through her irritation. She threw back the covers, grabbed her keys, and drove hastily back to his house. All the way, she kept dialing my number, but was met only by the monotonous, mechanical female voice. The number you have dialed is currently busy. She berated herself. She'd been too hasty today, too insistent on forcing Marcus to accept the children. Threatening court action? How could she have been so callous? It was just seeing Leo's bleeding forehead. She'd been so angry that Marcus, a grown man, could lose control like that. How could he be so jealous, so petty, taking out his frustrations on a child? Couldn't he just treat her children as his own? Wouldn't her children respect him in the future? She pushed open the front door, a shiver of apprehension running down her spine. Marcus, she called out, her voice echoing in the sudden, unnerving silence of the large house. Only the hollow sound of her own voice answered. A knot of dread tightened in her stomach. She raced upstairs, throwing open the door to our bedroom. She yanked open the wardrobe. The hangers, usually crowded with my suits and shirts, swayed, starkly empty. Her eyes darted upwards. The large, framed wedding photograph that had hung above the bed was gone. Panic seized her. She rushed into the ensuite bathroom. My toothbrush, my towels, my shaving kit, all vanished. For the first time, a genuine, bone-deep fear gripped Vivian. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She frantically redialed my number, again and again, only to be met with that same infuriatingly calm. The number you have dialed is currently busy. An hour later, Vivian sat slumped on the living room sofa, a crumpled piece of paper in her trembling hand. The divorce agreement. Marcus was truly divorcing her. And the most devastating blow. He had placed the entire multi-million-dollar demolition compensation into an irrevocable trust fund, with annual disbursements designated for impoverished rural communities and orphanages. A fear unlike anything she had felt in years enveloped her. She hugged herself tightly, shrinking into the cushions. The last time she'd felt this terrified, this helpless, was 18 years ago. Her mother, a compulsive gambler, had lost a huge sum and, in desperation, had virtually sold Vivian, then a teenager, to a lecherous, 40-year-old bachelor. When the man's foul breath and groping hands had been on her, she'd instinctively smashed a wooden stool over his head. She'd been locked up, her mother screaming at her for ruining the deal, desperately trying to offload her to anyone, even a 60-year-old widower. But her reputation for being fierce and unmanageable preceded her. Then, Ethan's mother had stepped in. She'd paid off the gambling debt and arranged the childhood engagement between Vivian and Ethan, who was just a boy himself then. In reality, Vivian was essentially bought as an unpaid servant for their family. From that day on, Vivian not only did all the chores in her own dilapidated home, but was also responsible for chopping wood and weeding the fields for Ethan's family. This drudgery continued until she met Marcus in her first year of high school. At the freshman welcome party, she had performed a peacock dance she'd taught herself from watching grainy videos. Marcus, captivated, had fallen for her. He'd used his own pocket money, saved from odd jobs, to pay for her first real dance lessons. He'd found ways to earn more money to cover her tuition fees, to buy her nutritious food. If it hadn't been for Marcus, She often wondered if she would have even finished high school, let alone gained admission to a prestigious dance academy and become the celebrated dancer she was today. He had even defied his own formidable father, risking his inheritance for her. The sudden ringing of her phone jolted Vivian from her painful reverie. She took a deep, shaky breath and answered. "Vivian, darling." Ethan's voice, usually smooth, sounded strained. "Leo's complaining of a headache. He's crying for you. Can you come and soothe him?" Then, a child's whining voice in the background. "Mommy, I feel sick. My head hurts so much. It's all that bad man's fault. I want you to hold me while I sleep." Listening to their coordinated performance, a wave of bitter regret washed over Vivian. For the first time, she truly regretted her moment of weakness, her sentimental decision. Ethan, despite his fair looks and glib tongue, had been thoroughly spoiled by his doting mother. He was a pretty boy, incapable of hard work, allergic to responsibility. He found manual labor too tiring, and his earnings from sporadic, low-paying jobs were meager. Consequently, by his late 20s, no sensible young woman in their village was willing to marry him. She remembered that fateful day she'd returned to her village for a visit. Ethan had clung to her, weeping dramatically, wailing about how he had failed his mother, how he would die without giving her a grandchild to carry on the family name. Ethan's mother had then knelt on the dusty ground, tears streaming down her wrinkled face, begging Vivian. She claimed the long-standing, albeit informal, childhood engagement had ruined Ethan's prospects, tarnished his reputation. She pleaded with Vivian, appealing to the kindness Vivian had once been shown when they'd taken her in, to give the Lin family an heir. Vivian had hesitated, looking at Ethan, who had always been adept at playing the charming, needy younger brother, and then at his mother, who seemed on the verge of collapse. She had been swayed. Under the barrage of their fervent promises and emotional blackmail, she had, in a moment of what she now recognized as profound folly, agreed. Her thought at the time was deceptively simple: fulfill this one obligation to Ethan and his mother, then sever ties completely. A clean break. But things had veered off course, subtly at first, then irrevocably, when 3 tiny, soft, helpless babies were placed in her arms, nuzzling against her, their small hands clutching her fingers, their sweet voices eventually learning to call her mama. Her resolve had melted. She found herself drawn back, again and again. She'd shared meals with them, played games, walked them to and from their small village school. Gradually, the dangerous, seductive thought had taken root, to bring them into her life fully, to acknowledge them, to care for them openly. After a long, tormented silence, clarity, sharp and painful, pierced through Vivian's confusion. She had been wrong, colossally wrong. She had betrayed a genuine, selfless love, and then, with shameless audacity, had demanded that the man she betrayed embrace the consequences of her infidelity. Vivian's mind was made up. She would find Marcus. She would apologize, truly, humbly. She would discuss the children with him, listen to his terms, abide by his decision. If necessary, she would send the 3 children and Ethan back to the village. She would provide child support, of course, but she would not see them again. It was the only way. The next morning, Vivian was jolted awake by a sharp knock on the door. She opened it to find Mr. Davies, Marcus's secretary, accompanied by an unfamiliar couple. Mr. Davies, his expression polite but distant, greeted her with a curt, "Mrs. Shun." Then, without further preamble, he began to show the couple around the house, pointing out features, discussing prices. Vivian, confused and alarmed, stepped forward. "Mr. Davies, what is the meaning of this? Who gave you permission to bring strangers into my home? When did I ever say I wanted to sell this house?" Mr. Davies regarded her coolly. "Mrs. Shun, it was Mr. Shun's instructions. He asked me to finalize the sale within 3 days." "Impossible," Vivian cried, her voice rising in panic. "This is Marcus's ancestral home. He would never sell it. He couldn't." She fumbled for her phone, her hands shaking, and dialed Marcus's number. Miraculously, this time, it connected. "Marcus, what's going on?" she demanded, her voice shrill. "Mr. Davies is here with people, saying you're selling the house." "Why would you sell the house? If there's a problem, we can talk about it." Marcus's voice on the other end was calm, cold, and utterly devoid of emotion. "Vivian, you need to make arrangements to move out as soon as possible. I have indeed decided to sell the old house." "But why? Why suddenly sell the ancestral home? Can't we discuss this properly?" she pleaded. A dry, humorless chuckle came through the line. The divorce papers have been signed on my end, Vivian. I'm joining Mr. Peterson's venture in Seaforth. I wouldn't want to impede your family reunion any longer. With that, he decisively ended the call. Vivian tried calling back, again and again, but he didn't answer. Her face was pale and drawn. As she lowered her phone, she realized with a jolt that Ethan, followed by the 3 children, was standing in the living room doorway, his expression thunderous. He was staring at the divorce agreement she had left on the coffee table. Vivian, Ethan hissed, his face dark with fury. What is this Shin playing at? That demolition money. How dare he put it all into some damn trust fund without consulting you? It's marital property. You're legally entitled to half of it. And this house, he thinks he can just sell it out from under you? What does he take you for? His voice rose, filled with indignation. He's trying to blackmail you, Vivian. He's trying to force you to abandon your own children, to make you look like a heartless, unnatural mother. He spat on the floor. That useless bastard. Can't even father his own children, and now he dares to act so high and mighty. If he won't be reasonable, then sue him. Take him to court. Frankly, if he divorces you, it's for the best. Then we can finally be a proper family, without him lurking in the shadows. Vivian frowned, a flicker of her old spirit returning. Ethan, that demolition money came from his father's property. This house is his ancestral home. He has every right to decide what to do with them. How can I possibly sue him for what is rightfully his? She looked at him sharply. And another thing, he is not useless. I've told you countless times, he chose not to have children for my sake, for my career. I am the one who wronged him. You are forbidden from ever speaking about him that way again. Ethan's face contorted with disbelief and anger at her defense of Marcus. He dramatically pulled the 3 children towards him. Vivian, you're too soft-hearted, too sentimental. Leo, Elias, and Aaron, these are your real family, your flesh and blood. Marcus Shun is just an outsider, a means to an end. Even if you don't care about yourself, you have to think about your children. What will happen to them when they grow up? Who will buy them cars, houses, set them up in life? Do you want them to end up like me, struggling, unmarried, with no prospects? Vivian stared at Ethan, a profound sense of shock and dawning horror washing over her. He had always claimed that his greatest wish was for the 5 of them to be together, that money and the factory were unimportant. Yet now, his first words were about the demolition money, the house. He was urging her to sue Marcus, to fight for assets. He was demanding to know who would provide for the children's future, conveniently forgetting his earlier promises not to bother her, not to ask for anything. Everything he had said, every promise he had made, seemed to be unraveling. Mr. Davies, who had been observing this exchange with a cynical expression, stepped forward. Mrs. Shun, he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. So this gentleman is your good friend from your hometown? It seems the arrangement was for you to bear his children, raise his children, and, if I'm not mistaken, support him financially as well. He clicked his tongue. No wonder Mr. Shun is selling the house and moving to another province. His wife not only cheats on him and presents him with another man's children, but also expects him to support her lover, this kept man. Frankly, it's a testament to Mr. Shun's remarkable restraint and good upbringing that he didn't take a knife to the pair of you. Ethan bristled, his face flushing. Who cares about his money? He's the one, the pathetic fool, who willingly showered Vivian with it. What's that got to do with me? He puffed out his chest. I provide emotional value. I've invested my time and energy. It's only natural that Vivian should spend money on me. What would a mere secretary like you understand about such things? Mr. Davies actually let out a short, incredulous laugh. Ah, I see. So, you kept Mrs. Shun company, and she was happy to pay for your services. Understood. His expression then hardened, and he turned to Vivian, his voice stern. Mrs. Shun, Mr. Shin's devotion to you was evident to everyone who knew him. How can you treat him like this? Don't you feel any shame? Does your conscience not trouble you at all? He spat on the ground near Ethan's feet, turned on his heel, and strode out of the house, the prospective buyers trailing nervously behind him. Vivian stared at Ethan, truly seeing him for the first time. When had he ever provided emotional value? What effort had he ever invested? Since when had he felt entitled to be kept by her? A sickening realization dawned. Had it all been a lie? A carefully constructed, long-term manipulation? A conspiracy? Her face, already pale, turned ashen. Ethan, she said, her voice trembling. You told me. You swore. It was just about giving the Lin family an heir, about repaying your mother for her kindness to me when I was young. You promised the children wouldn't be my burden, that you wouldn't ask for anything. What is the meaning of all this now? Ethan nonchalantly brushed an imaginary speck of dust from his sleeve, his lips curling into a sneer. Vivian, let me spell it out for you. Those 3 boys came out of your body. Therefore, you are responsible for them. You will provide for them. You will buy them cars and houses when the time comes. His voice turned menacing. If you don't sue Marcus Shun and get that money, I'll dump all 3 of them on your doorstep, and you'll never see me again. And don't forget, he added, his eyes glittering with malice, you're 6 years older than me. For the past 10 years, haven't I been the one indulging you, catering to your whims, keeping you company? Isn't it only right that you should support me in return? Vivian swayed, her legs giving out. She sank to the floor, staring at him in horrified disbelief. After a long, choking silence, she finally found her voice, a hoarse whisper. Ethan, you're a monster. A manipulative, lying parasite. She tried to scramble to her feet, to launch herself at him, but he casually kicked out, sending her sprawling. Vivian, he said, his voice cold and hard. If you want a peaceful life, you'll sue Shun and get that money. Otherwise, don't blame me for what happens next. With that, he grabbed the 3 wide-eyed, silent children and swaggered out of the house. Vivian had thought Ethan was merely bluffing, making empty threats. She was wrong. He actually moved himself and the 3 boys into her mother's small, 2-bedroom apartment, the one Marcus had bought. He unceremoniously threw her mother's bedding into the tiny living room, claiming the master bedroom for himself and Aaron. Leo and Elias were installed in the 2nd bedroom. His justification? He had toiled for 10 years raising the children. It was time he was compensated with some comfort. He even had the audacity to shout from the balcony, "Let the neighbors judge. A grown man like me, forced to live in the shadows. Wronged for 10 years. Raising another man's children while being the secret lover. Don't I deserve some compensation for my suffering?" Her mother, though notoriously abrasive, still possessed a shred of pride. The thought of the entire neighborhood knowing her daughter was supporting a kept man and had borne illegitimate children was a mortification she couldn't bear in silence, yet couldn't publicly refute. Ethan and the boys settled in, transforming the once tidy apartment into a chaotic sty. They ate, drank, watched television at deafening volumes, and played video games day and night. The 3 hellions, as her mother tearfully called them, ran amok, breaking vases, overturning furniture, drawing on walls. They fought constantly over the TV remote, their meals, their toys. Mealtimes were a nightmare of picky demands. One wanted fried chicken, another pork ribs, the 3rd sweet and sour fish. If their exact whim wasn't met, tantrums ensued, screaming, table pounding, food throwing. Within a week, the relentless stress triggered her mother's chronic heart condition. She collapsed in the bathroom late one night. Ethan, apparently, didn't even notice or didn't care. It wasn't until midday, when her mother had been unconscious for hours, that he bothered to call for an ambulance. By the time she reached the hospital, doctors rushed her into the ICU. They managed to save her life, but prolonged oxygen deprivation had caused irreversible brain damage. She was left paralyzed from the waist down. Ethan, having been forced to move out of Marcus's ancestral home, had just found a new rental. Now, with the crippling medical bills, Vivian had to sell every piece of jewelry, every designer bag and dress Marcus had ever bought her, just to cover the initial hospital fees. When her mother was finally discharged, Vivian's savings were completely depleted. Seeing that the well had run dry, Ethan became even more insufferable. He slept all day, then blasted loud music and wailed off-key karaoke all night. Her mother, frail and freshly discharged, couldn't endure the torment. She fainted several times. Vivian had to cancel all her dance performances, her days consumed by caring for her invalid mother and catering to Ethan and the 3 demanding boys. Finally, at her breaking point, she confronted Ethan, her voice raw with exhaustion and despair. "What do you want from me, Ethan? What will it take for you to leave? Do you want to drive me to my death? You won't get a penny then." Ethan, coolly, named his price, $5 million. Get him the money, and he would take the children and disappear from her life forever, moving to another country. After days of desperate, tearful bargaining, she managed to haggle him down to $3 million. When Vivian found me, I was on a dusty construction site in Seaforth, overseeing the foundations of my new factory. It had been less than a month since I'd last seen her, but she was almost unrecognizable. Her face was sallow and gaunt, dark circles hollowed out her eyes, and her usually lustrous hair was dry, tangled, and carelessly piled on her head. The vibrant, exquisite dancer was gone, replaced by a haunted, desperate wraith. She looked at me with an expression of pitiable desperation. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please, you have to help me. Ethan, he's not human. He's a demon." Tears streamed down her ravaged face, and she began to sob uncontrollably. I gestured for the engineers I was with to step away, then turned to her, my expression impassive. "Vivian," I said, my voice flat, "we are divorced. If you have problems, shouldn't you be seeking help from your blood relatives? Your fine sons, your loving mother." Vivian hastily wiped her tears, her eyes pleading. Mom is paralyzed, Marcus. You know her temperament. I can't rely on her for anything. She just weeps and blames me." Her voice dropped to a desperate whisper. "Marcus, I was wrong. I was so wrong. I truly know that now. I shouldn't have sided with them. I shouldn't have hurt you so deeply." She reached out, her hand trembling, and clutched my arm. "I finally understand. You were the only one who ever truly cared for me, Marcus. Only you were willing to help me." Ethan said. "He said if I give him $3 million, he'll take the children and leave the country. He'll never bother us again. We can start over, Marcus, please?" Her eyes, though dulled by suffering, held a desperate, rekindled hope. "Marcus, it's just $3 million. You're so capable, so brilliant in business. You'll earn it back in 5 years, maybe less. And then I'll be good to you. I swear. I'll devote myself to you. We can have a child of our own, a real family. We can have a good life. Marcus, please, just say yes." A humorless, scornful laugh escaped me. So, my years of devotion, my boundless indulgence, had led her to believe that my forgiveness was so easily bought, my love so unconditional it could withstand any betrayal? If she had come to me with this realization, this plea, a month ago, before the full extent of her deceit and the calculated cruelty of her family had been laid bare, perhaps, just perhaps, I might have considered it, chalking some of it up to a moment of profound foolishness on her part. But she had been so utterly consumed by her precious childhood sweetheart, so focused on their children, so dismissive of my pain. Did she think that because I had once loved her deeply, she could trample on my dignity, use me as a convenient fallback, an endless source of funds, whenever her other plans went awry? "Vivian," I said, my voice as cold as the steel girders rising around us, "just because someone else deceived you, used you, and then abandoned you when the money ran out, doesn't mean you can come crawling back to me to be your safety net, your perpetual ATM. I am not a dumping ground for anyone's mistakes or bad judgments, especially not for a woman with a heart of stone and the morals of an alley cat." Vivian's face went from ashen to flushed red, then to a sickly, mottled chin. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they were tears of shame and fury. She stared at me for a long moment. Then, covering her face with her hands, she turned and fled. For the next 2 weeks, she came to the construction site every day. She brought chicken soup in a thermos, containers of fragrant braised pork with rice, my old favorites. Each time I took what she offered and, right in front of her, emptied it into the nearest trash bin. Vivian would stand by, her face a mask of humiliation, her hands twisting in her lap, her head bowed. It's a strange quirk of human nature, isn't it? What is too easily obtained is often treated with contempt, discarded like refuse. Only when it's lost, truly lost, does regret begin to bloom. But the human heart is a fragile thing, easily bruised, easily scarred. How many betrayals, how many scalds of deceit can it endure before it hardens completely? After 2 weeks of this silent, painful ritual, Vivian finally left, her shoulders slumped in defeat, her face streaked with tears. I didn't say a word to stop her. We are all adults. She had made her choices, and now she had to bear the consequences. The investment income from the trust fund I had established provided her with $10,000 a month for living expenses. That, I felt, was the last act of kindness, the final severing of our ties. I hoped, for her own sake, she would find a way to rebuild her life, to learn from her mistakes. Less than 10 days later, I was served with a court summons. Vivian was actually suing me. A cold, cynical smile touched my lips. I had hoped to bury the stench of this whole affair, to simply walk away. But if they insisted on dragging the ugliness into the light, then so be it. Let the world see the complete, unvarnished, putrid truth. In the courtroom, Vivian avoided my gaze, her eyes darting nervously around the room. Ethan, however, sat in the public gallery, slouched insolently, one leg arrogantly crossed over the other, a smug, proprietary smirk on his face. He certainly had reason for his confidence, didn't he? 3 healthy sons, a woman to support him, and the potential to walk away with millions in cash. Not a bad outcome for a man of his talents. Vivian's lawyer, a slick, eloquent man, painted a poignant picture of his client, a devoted wife who had supported my business endeavors tirelessly, a selfless homemaker who had been grievously wronged by my unilateral decision to dispose of joint marital assets. He passionately argued for her right to half of my net worth. I hadn't even bothered to hire a lawyer for this charade. I simply stood, my face impassive, and presented a meticulously organized dossier of documents and financial statements to the court. During our marriage, I detailed expenses related to my mother-in-law, her medical treatments, living allowance, travel, the apartment, totaled over $3,200,000. Vivian's expenses, her advanced studies, self-funded participation in various dance workshops and competitions, international training trips, designer wardrobe, beauty treatments, and other personal indulgences amounted to a staggering $5,680,000. Her own salary, a respectable $13,000 a month from her dance company, had never once contributed to our household expenses. Where that money had gone, only she knew. Or perhaps Ethan did. Including the initial cost of the apartment for her mother, over the past decade, I had spent nearly $10 million on Vivian and her maternal family, an average of almost $1 million a year. No wonder the furniture factory, despite my best efforts, had often struggled to maintain a healthy profit margin. Unbeknownst to me, its resources had been steadily siphoned off, coaxed away by Vivian for her multifaceted life. I then presented the deeds and financial records for the furniture factory and the ancestral home, irrefutably proving they were premarital assets, inherited directly from my father, and thus had no legal connection to Vivian or our marriage. Therefore, I concluded, my voice calm and steady, if we are to strictly adhere to the division of marital property and consider the sums I have expended on Ms. Hayes and her mother, which were drawn from my personal and business accounts, I believe it is Ms. Hayes who owes me a considerable sum, approximately $5 million. The presiding judge carefully examined the documents, his expression growing increasingly grim. He eventually called for a recess and suggested mediation. In the arbitration room, Vivian looked at me, her eyes swimming with tears. "Marcus," she pleaded, her voice a desperate whisper, "I truly know I was wrong. Please, just help me. This one last time. Please." Her hand reached for mine. "I'll do anything. I'll be your servant, your slave, for the rest of my life, if you just help me get Ethan out of my life." I looked at her, a wave of cold disgust washing over me. It's true what they say. Pitiful people often have detestable traits. I had plucked her from a world of poverty and exploitation, offered her a life of comfort, love, and opportunity. Yet, she had willingly, eagerly, crawled back into the mire. When I first fell in love with her, it wasn't just her beauty and talent that attracted me. It was her perceived resilience, her capacity for hard work, her ambition. I hadn't realized then how deeply the poison of her upbringing, the selfishness and moral ambiguity of her environment, had seeped into her very bones. Selfishness, an inability to distinguish right from wrong, boundless greed, a narrow, ignorant worldview, and a complete lack of principles or a moral compass. These were her true inheritance. Before I could respond, Ethan, who had somehow managed to insert himself into the mediation, jumped to his feet. "Money spent on parents is filial piety," he declared, his voice ringing with self-righteous indignation. "Money spent on a wife is a husband's duty. It was all money he should have spent. How dare he ask for it back?" He puffed out his chest. Vivian gave him the best years of her youth, more than a decade of her life. He should at least pay compensation for her lost youth, for her emotional distress. Look at those hostesses in nightclubs. They charge $20,000 or $30,000 a year, easily. For 10 years, $3 million is a bargain, isn't it? The judge's face darkened. A shocked murmur ran through the room. People stared at Ethan, pointing and whispering. He, however, remained blissfully, or perhaps defiantly, oblivious, basking in the attention. He even launched into a rambling discourse about my supposed infertility, brazenly declaring that since Vivian had children with him, her children, they too had a right to inherit my assets. The judge, the court clerk, even Vivian's own lawyer, stared at him, their jaws practically on the floor. They had seen shameless individuals in court before, but never someone who wore his utter lack of decency like a badge of honor, parading his depravity for all to see. Vivian's face was a mask of crimson mortification. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she could only look at me with a helpless, pleading gaze. Seeing my moment, I cleared my throat. "Your Honor," I said, my voice clear and resonant. "I would now like to formally sue Mr. Ethan Cole for fraud against Ms. Vivian Hayes, and for extorting, under the pretext of these children, a sum in excess of $4 million from Ms. Hayes over a period of several years." I paused for effect. The triplets he so proudly claims are, in fact, not Ms. Hayes' biological children. They are the children of Ethan Cole and a prostitute named Lila Morgan. A collective gasp sucked the air from the room. For a moment, there was absolute, stunned silence. I stepped forward and submitted the DNA test results to the court. The reports unequivocally showed no biological link between the triplets and Vivian. They did, however, confirm paternity for Ethan Cole and maternity for Lila Morgan. Then, I told the court the full, bizarre story. Ethan, unable to find a wife due to his indolence and lack of prospects, had become a regular patron of brothels. There, he had formed a relationship with Lila Morgan. When Lila learned that Ethan had a childhood fiancé who was now a famous dancer married into a wealthy family, a plan began to form in her mercenary mind. She had coached Ethan to manipulate Vivian, to play on her past obligations and sympathies, to pressure her into giving him a child. Meanwhile, she and Ethan had located an unscrupulous underground clinic and arranged for IVF. On the day Ethan and Vivian had their arranged intimate encounter, Vivian had been drugged. The fertilized embryos, Lila's eggs, Ethan's sperm, had been implanted into Vivian's unsuspecting womb. To maximize their potential financial gain, they had implanted 3 embryos, hoping for multiple births and, consequently, larger child support payments. Their scheme was diabolical. Someone else would carry and bear the children. Someone else would pay for their upbringing, and eventually, the children would inherit their mother's substantial wealth. Ethan and Lila planned to live a life of leisure. However, I continued, when I saw the children and then looked at Ethan, a seed of doubt was planted. Triplets are rare enough, but these children bore no resemblance to Vivian, nor, frankly, much to Ethan. It was unsettling. A discreet inquiry, a handsome private investigator, a few drinks with the talkative Ms. Morgan, and the entire sordid truth came spilling out. When I finished, the courtroom erupted. Shouts of disbelief, curses, cries of outrage. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly, calling for order. Vivian, her face a deathly white, let out a choked cry and collapsed onto the floor. The scene descended into chaos. The judge had no choice but to declare an adjournment. Vivian was rushed to the hospital. She regained consciousness shortly after. The doctor said it was acute emotional shock, nothing life-threatening. I went to see her briefly. She lay staring blankly at the ceiling, unresponsive. Seeing she was physically stable, I left. A day later, a sensational news story broke. A woman had broken into a man's home late at night. She had, according to the fragmented reports, attacked the man with a knife, then killed 3 young boys who were also present in the house. After the horrific acts, the woman had reportedly sealed the doors and windows, opened the gas lines, and ignited it. The resulting explosion and fire consumed everything. Few identifiable remains were recovered. Hearing this news, I felt not a ripple of emotion. I had given them chances, opportunity after opportunity, to walk away, to choose a different path. Their insatiable greed, their bottomless depravity, had led them to this end. If they chose hell, they could walk into it together. A year later, I adopted a little boy, a bright, cheerful child from one of the orphanages my trust now supported. I bought a house in Seaforth, far from the ghosts of my past, and started a new life. As the business grew busier, my days filled with new challenges and small joys, I rarely thought of what lay behind me. Right and wrong, good and evil, sometimes blur like smoke. Perhaps, in the end, it is only by cultivating our own small garden of goodness, by tending to our own karma, that we can hope to encounter true blessings. The end.